Video coverage of the 27th JCT Traffic Signal Symposium is brought to you by Highways News, thanks to our sponsors AGD Intelligent Traffic Systems, Clearview Intelligence, PTV Group, Message Maker Displays, Smart Video and Sensing, SRL and TRL.
I'm going to just ramble about things that I get asked over and over, and hopefully I can educate you, give you a few thoughts, and maybe help you deploy mobile a bit more successfully than people have done in the past. So I've got several themes I want to talk about. My pet one is antennas, and then I'm going to ask anybody if they know the Heinz beams from a Ford, security, and then 2G and 3G and beyond. But before I start, could I ask everybody in the auditorium to please look up at the ceiling? No, keep going, keep going. Does that detract from this presentation? You're looking up there. And if it does, you'll see why in a moment. You can look at me now again. Antennas. Placement is everything. It's a pet hate of mine when I'm driving around and I see antennas that are completely in the wrong plane. So if you've got a puck antenna, have it horizontal. That's the way it's supposed to be, so it has a full 360 view. Don't put it on the side of cabinets where it's shielded. And it has, at best, 90-degree view of the local mobile infrastructure. It seems obvious, but over and over, as I go to installations, and they put a puck antenna, not only in the wrong plane, but on the side of a cabinet. What about water egress, you ask? I'm glad you asked. The puck antennas, if you buy a good quality one from Soretta or Pointing or Micromark, there's a plethora of antenna manufacturers. The neoprene washer is designed for marine applications. So as long as it's fitted correctly to the cabinet, it will outlive the installation in most cases, because it's not a hostile environment such at the side of a road junction. And likewise with stick antennas, the number of AMPI cameras and CCTV cameras, where I see a stick antenna that should be vertical, and it's horizontal, and the pitch quality and the dropouts are quite high. So please, think of your poor antennas, put them in the plane that they're meant to be, and the results are amazing. Which brings me on to my second pet hate with antennas. Generally, a stick antenna has about 5 to 7 decibel gain, but there seems to be a perpetuity in the industry to stick it on a pole, and then have 9 meters or 10 meters of cable in the ducting, and 5 meters up the pole. Even if you use low loss cabling, you're losing about half a decibel per meter. So you've got 5 decibel gain on the top of your pole, and yet you've got 15 meters. So the net result is you're hampering your installation by 2.5 decibels. And because it's a logarithmic scale, that's a huge difference. And in semi-rural and rural locations, that can make the difference between a successful rollout and a failed one. So try and keep the distance as short as you can between your modem, your router, and any antenna that you provide. And again, it will help with connectivity over time. So that's my pet hates got rid of. I'll move on and try and give you some more knowledge. Over and over, I have to keep explaining that buying a SIM card isn't like buying a tin of beans. Purchasing guys, procurement people, think of mobile SIM cards as Heinz beans. It doesn't matter if you buy Heinz beans from Asda at 80p or you pay £3.50 at Fortnum and Mason's. Heinz beans is Heinz beans. And that's how they think about SIM cards. If it's got a Vodafone on, it doesn't care whether it's £6 or 50 pence. It's got Vodafone on. The product's the same. And that can be further than the truth. Mobile networks are more like a vehicle manufacturer, like Ford, who try and serve 3 different markets. So Ford have a consumer product, the cars. They have a light commercial product, which would be the Connect van, I guess, or Escort van if you're of my age. And then they produce proper industrial stuff, trucks, transit vans, that will move the loads around very, very reliably. And so it is with mobile networks. They have consumer products that sit in your iPhones. And these are the cheapest form of data that you'll find. And these find their way into installations throughout the country. But they're meant to be mobile phones. So when the network detects that the device is always on, it introduces its fair use policy, and it can disconnect you. So you get dropouts. Your data doesn't get passed in the manner that you expect. It gets throttled. The second market that it serves, the light haulage, if you will, is mobile broadband. And that's designed to sit in iPads or in laptops. And again, it's about occasional use. You get on, you do a few emails, you do your Facebook or Twitter or whatever, and then you disconnect. The third option that you have is IoT, or machine to machine. And this is designed to be on all the time. The network looks for these connections and tries to support them. But procurement guys are always looking for Heinz beans. So unless you say that you want a machine to machine or an IoT SIM, your procurement guys will just give you Heinz beans, and your project will fail. So work with your procurement guys, specify what you need, and your results will change dramatically. Which brings me on to my next point, and this is a real burning topic in my industry at the moment. Mobius Networks services chip and pin machines. We've got about 80% of the UK market of chip and pin machines, and cybersecurity is our biggest topic at the moment. But in this industry, I feel it's kind of ignored. And again, you need to work with your procurement teams and think about security. Because if the lights went out in Manchester, there'd be a few red faces and some awkward questions asked, but the officers in Manchester would survive. But if you're a Siemens or a Swarco and you get hacked and you can't provide a service for 6 weeks, as happened with Spar recently, what's that going to do to the business? What's it going to do to the confidence of your customers? So cybersecurity is something you really need to think about. So I'll expand a bit about that. So a common standard that you see, or I see all the time on tenders, they ask for ISO 27001. It's very, very long in the tooth, but it's a policy document. It's a set of promises. I promise to lock up my laptop when I leave the room. I promise to lock up my drawers. Unless it's policed, it's no better than a pinky promise. It's a tick box exercise. But yet it's the standard that most procurement teams use as testing whether something is safe and secure. One that's government-backed is Cyber Essentials. And Cyber Essentials on its own is aimed at the SMEs who can't go through the time and expense of doing 27001. So they'll go for Cyber Essentials. And as with 27001, it's self-certification. It's a tick box. Is that good enough security for you guys? Maybe it's not. So we move on. I think this has to be the absolute minimum that anybody that's thinking of introducing anything, IoT, in the next few years, you have to ask for this from everybody within the supply chain. And I mean everybody. There was a recent hack of NHS 111 services. And it wasn't the tier 1 that got hacked that supplied the software. It wasn't the tier 2 who helped the tier 1 write the software that got hacked. It was a subcontractor to the subcontractor, if you will, who got hacked. And it brought the whole system down. So you need to work with your procurement teams and ensure that you've got Cyber Essentials Plus. And why I like this is it's third-party audited. So it's not tick box. Your premises get inspected, your security gets inspected, you undergo a penetration test. So it really is a test of people's security, cybersecurity. And like I say, unless you want all your lights to go out, I think it's an absolute must moving forward with anything IoT. And then finally, probably the real gold standard is PCI DSS, which is the payment card industry digital security standard. Mobius has had it since 2013 because of the credit card data that we carry. But it's now finding its way out of payment cards. So you get organisations as disparate as Yale University, AWS Cloud, Sports, PCI. And that's because it's a living thing. It's trying to keep up with the arms race of the hackers. So it's seen as the gold standard. And like I say, it's being adopted by Whirlpool, AWS, and others. So, something else to consider. So, just a quick question for you. You know, how comfortable would you feel if your system wasn't nailed down, screwed down? Can you be a little bit secure? In my view, you can't be a little bit secure either, or you're not. This question seems to be probably the one I spend most of my day answering. I'm sure you're all aware that 3G is sunsetting at the end of the year and the implications for it. So I thought I'd try and explain it, because it's not going to be a clean cut-off. Vodafone or EE or O2 aren't going to switch it off to the 1st of January. It's going to be a long, painful death. It's equivalent of Windows XP. You know, XP computers carried on and on and on until they were totally unsupported and fell over. And it's going to be the same with 3G. So, this is your town, if you will, the black area, and this is a representation of the 2G network that might be in place at the moment. And overlaid that in the blue is the 3G cells, and that's the state of play as of today. But as of January, what you'll see is that as cells need any kind of repair, whether it's a patch, whether it's a physical replacement of hardware, the networks will not do it. So you can wake up the 1st of January and half your 3G provision has gone. But you'll also notice that the 2G cell has gone as well, because they'll be starting culling some of that bandwidth back. So you might take comfort that 3G is going, but at least I've got 2G. I've got 2G equipment. But that network's going to be thinner over time, and it's going to accelerate. So as the time goes on, you'll still have your 2G cells, but thinner. Your 3G is disappearing all the time. And by 2025, you may have just one cell covering your area that's 2G. So you'll have limited throughput, limited bandwidth. The availability won't be there. And the red cells represent the 4G, 5G network that will replace it. And this brings me on to my last slide, which is 5G. What's 5G going to be about? Everybody assumes it's going to be, I can download my Netflix episode in 3 seconds or less, or I can move big files very, very quickly across the network. And you can, that's what 5G is about for the consumer. But for IoT applications, you're going to have narrowband IoT or LTM that will allow battery power devices. So if you've got a remote monitoring site, or you've got a speed site, or anything that you've wanted to deploy on mobile and couldn't, now it can be powered by battery, or wind, or solar. And the throughput is similar to 2G, 3G. So, you know, it can support lots of applications, but battery powered. Another flavour of 5G is network slicing. So if an authority wants guaranteed bandwidth for its traffic light control, for example, or CCTV, you can buy guaranteed bandwidth from the network slicing. So effectively, it replaces a mesh network, for example, and it is yours to own, yours to use and abuse. Other features include eSIMs. It's a word that's bandied about at the moment, and there are 1 or 2 people in the marketplace trying to sell this solution. But there's an air of caution on it that EUICC, which allows you to have a SIM card that today is on Vodafone and tomorrow O2 is doing a super duper deal. So you can move it to O2 without replacing the SIM card or doing anything. It's like moving your bank nowadays. You'd just be able to move seamlessly from one to the other. It's nirvana, but the standard still isn't ratified. So you've had people like BMW get caught out with that one. They wanted to move all the comms from their vehicles over time, or let the end user choose who supplies the SIMs. And they put 10 million out there, and they can move it. They can't move them away from Vodafone because the standard hadn't been ratified. So beware. Likewise with multi-IMSI, this is putting 2 networks on a single SIM, so you can have O2 and 3 together. And there's an applet on the SIM, so if O2 drops out, it'll then go on to 3. But because it's an applet, there's a break-in service, and if it doesn't go according to plan, the hardware is interrupted for power or whatever, then you could end up with a stranded device. So again, an error of caution. These products are out there, but I don't think they're there yet. So if somebody rocks up with a super duper bag of magic SIMs that you can go onto any network, please just take them with a pinch of salt, or ask some very pointed questions about how they can guarantee that they'll move from one to another, or ask them to show you it moved from one or another. That's the real acid test. And then finally, you've got ULLC, or ultra low latency communications. And this will give throughput sub 5 milliseconds end to end. So it's really, really fast. And the application for that, and people are talking about autonomous vehicles and connected vehicles, is an example that Siemens put out in 2019. So if a vehicle travelling at 100 kilometres an hour receives a stop command over 4G, it will travel 60 centimetres in the time it takes for the message to travel over the air and be received by the vehicle. Using ULLC, it takes 5 milliseconds. So the car, from receiving the command being issued from the central server, will take 5 milliseconds to hit the car. And the car will travel 7 centimetres, which means the car in front saves its boot or doesn't. So that is what I think 5G will bring for this audience, rather than speed and throughput. And that's it. So it's a quick run through several disparate subjects. I hope I've informed, educated a little bit, got you to ask a few questions of your procurement teams and your suppliers. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. That was great. Any questions at all? Yes, over this side, please.
Hello, Greg Pearce, BTP Council. Thank you for that, Peter. I feel like my first job tomorrow is to go around Bournemouth and Poole and apologise to lots of antennas for the poor installs that we put in place. Just on that, is there a kind of an expert opinion that you can clarify on that distance from antenna to where we take the puck and replace it with the nearest signal pole antenna? Is it, you came up with a decibel thing there that threw me slightly, but when it comes to our field services guys putting these things in, we do exactly what you said we shouldn't be doing, and putting it on the side, usually away from where it can be fiddled with, probably making it even worse. I saw the distance there, but usually ours could easily be, like you said, maybe 10, 15 metres.
So the easiest solution for that is, rather than having 15, 20 metres of cable from your antenna to your router, it's move the router to the antenna and then bring the cabling back via Ethernet. So you're keeping the cable length as short as you possibly can. That really is the key. If you do nothing else in mobile, just make that connection length as short as you possibly can, and it will the biggest bang for your buck that you'll ever have.
The second part, so sorry to take two, but no, we've been talking about this all week, and obviously, as typically with other authorities, we've got maybe, hundreds of thousands of pounds for the 3G transition and removal, not just in hardware, but also in, of course, the SIM costs. So procurement, we do approach procurement. They tell us to use the cheapest that's available. We've got some, as well as customers of yourself through Mobius, we also use Vodafone for some very preferable cheap rates or good value rates. Do you foresee that we'll have those same opportunities for low corporate rates with 4G and 5G through other vendors other than yourself?
Yeah. What I would say to cheap SIMs from Vodafone through your corporate contract is your procurement guys will get them through the voice guys. So at best, you'll get a mobile broadband SIM, and at worst, you'll get a SIM that's designed to be set up and sit in an iPhone or a similar mobile device. So it's about talking to your procurement team and making sure that when they go approach Vodafone, they don't speak to the voice part of Vodafone, they speak to the machine-to-machine IoT arm of Vodafone. It's like you're going skipping into your local Ford dealership and try to buy a Fleetliner truck. They don't exist in the same world.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thank you for that. Question from me, actually. So you, for the security aspects, you talked about Cyber Essentials Plus.
Yep.
Is there a difference between Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus?
Yes, and it's the penetration test and third-party auditing. So Cyber Essentials, it really is a tick box. You get an online questionnaire to fill in. You fill it in, you submit it, and it's a binary pass or fail. But there's no penetration testing.
Yeah.
So again, it's no better than a pinky promise.
Yeah, so I think it's worthwhile actually understanding that if somebody says they're Cyber Essentials, you need the plus element of that. Yes, up here.
Hi, Matt Clayton, Dorset Council. We are currently moving everything through to 4G from 3G.
Can you use the microphone?
Oh, sorry. We're currently moving everything through to 4G SIMs from 3G. We're in a rural setting. The network connection isn't that great anyway. Do you foresee that when everything moves over to 4G from 3G, that actually 4G is going to drop in quality of connection?
No, 4G should pick up in quality because they're refarming the frequencies, we're moving them across. So the LTE elements, which are 4G, 5G, should become better and more robust in rural settings.
Microphone down here, please. We'll take this question, then we'll move on.
Just a question around the distance to the antenna.
Yep.
Is there a trade-off between having a shorter distance and having the antenna mounted higher?
No. So antennas mounted higher, it goes back to the old PMR private radio days and old radio arms. You're like, antennas really high. If you look at how a mobile mast shapes its beam, the optimum level for a mobile signal is about 1.5 metres to 2.2 metres, fully enough, around this height. So that's your window. So if you're going up high, again, you're hampering your mobile signal.
I think we've probably all been guilty of either putting them on the back of controllers so that they don't get vandalised, or on top of a 6-metre pole or something. So I think that's my biggest takeaway from this. So thank you for that.
Okay. Before I go, can I just plug this from ITS UK? It's a guide about comms. It's relatively easy read. It's got lots of do's and don'ts, if you will, some silly mistakes. Pick one up on your way out. I'm sure you'll find it useful.
So that's on the ITS UK stand. If it's still out there. But can we get it online as well?
It will be online in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, so that's something to look out for. If we can thank Peter, thank you.